Recording in progress. Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Okay, at this time, we will call this meeting to order. Mr. Zekis is on via Zoom, so we have all members present. With that, public comments. Anybody that would like to speak in public comments, please step towards the podium and take your turn. Don't everybody go at once. Anybody on Zoom for public comment? Nothing?
My comment is about
Can you provide your name and address, please?
Okay, Caroline Joyce, 526 West Capitol Drive, and it's in regards to the quarry. And I was in hopes that that there's been a look at the state laws. There's new ones that were sort of announced a few weeks ago about the reuse and repurposing of quarries, and to see that a person just doesn't sell them, they have to go and have it passed by the state, and you must know all of that. But I was just checking. And then the other part is when you do the construction in the quarry, that one is filled with caves, and it has tunnels and all sorts of things like that. And I hope that you're addressing how that's going to be taken care of, like on the sides of the quarry and those kinds of things. And and of course, the whole thing about traffic. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak in public comment? Just state your name and address, please.
Sure. Jim Romanowicz, 193 Hill Street. Again, it's about the quarry. I'm not that familiar with the project coming on, so I don't know if this is the venue to ask the question, but how many exits are going to be coming out of that project? And where are they going to be?
Currently, there's one exit that will be used as the main exit. We'll see some of that tonight. There
Okay.
is some emergency access that's going in, but that won't be used as a main thoroughfare.
Okay, and the estimated time of completion on that?
The developers will be presenting to us.
Okay, and I noted the number of units, but what's the estimated population of the project going to be? 400 and 500. And the other thing that I'd like to know is what's the upside to the residents in the area, if any?
That's something that we're gonna be talking about, and if you wanna have, those questions, you can call the village, and we will give that information. You can stay and you'll see we're gonna go over some stuff. There's a lot of meetings that take place with a development like this. If it continues to move forward, there's a lot of meetings that take place, so those details will unfold as we go through. Those are the things that we come to the planning commission to figure all those out. But you're more than welcome to always speak. You can call myself, any commissioner. I suggest that you contact, you can call Mr. Bailey, our village manager, and he will get you, if he can't give you the answers, we will get you any answers that you're looking for.
Including what the effect is going to be on police and fire and how that affects.
To the best of our ability, the village will always get you an answer to the best of our ability, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. We're not, what we can.
Dave Lamarand, 536 Saxony Court, and I'm here to talk a little bit about the quarry. A lot of time and effort was spent years ago in envisioning what that site could be developed into. And one of them is high density, almost like a little city contained within it. I would say 90% of the traffic will go up to 83 and will either go south or north, get on the 16 or go down to I-94. That's the way we envisioned it. We looked at the traffic studies way back then. They'll probably have to be revisited, but I think that what I read about the density, I think is way too low. I know we had envisioned something in a range of 4 to 450 units there, and that the infrastructure would be able to maintain that. And so I'd like to see it increased from the 240 that's projected right now, because you get one shot at this, okay? And that's it. We're running out of developable property within the village. This will be an excellent tax base for both the village and for the school systems. And also the school systems right now, if you look, they're looking at declining enrollment. So if we can add housing units and bring in kids to go to those schools, that will be a win-win for the taxpayer throughout. Also, if you look around, every place that you look at says help wanted. They can't get the help because the people can't get out here, they don't live out here. And this is an opportunity to increase that base, the employment base. And for those that don't know, I was village president for about 26 years, up until 2017. And this has been well thought out, and if you look at all the other developments that we have had within the village, I don't think we have had any developments that have had an adverse effect on anything in the village. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. Can you state
Lisa-
your name and address,
Sure,
please?
Lisa Brigette, 510 Hill Street.
Thank you.
Does anybody know how many units there are in Summit Lake?
We can get you that answer. I don't have that.
Okay, and I'm hoping that the developer can kind of state how he's going to address the erosion of the pit itself. I mean, I lived there since I was 6 years old, and it's changed. So I'm wondering if they're going to address any of that. Okay?
Thank you. Anyone else that wants to speak in public comment? Once the meeting starts rolling, once we get going, like on the first item on the agenda after public comment, if anybody does want to speak, feel free to speak now, because then it usually is it's the board or the people presenting, the developers, someone that has an item on the agenda. So I want to give a last call if anybody does want to speak. And again, any of you can contact the village at any time. You can email all of us, call any of us. Our numbers are on, most of it's our cell phone. Our numbers are on the website. This isn't, we don't do this in a vacuum. Communication can happen. If you have any of those questions that you didn't get answered tonight, feel free to contact the village. We'll get you any answers that we can to the best of our ability. Anybody on Zoom that wants to speak in public comment? Last call for public comment. The first item on our agenda is a consideration of a motion to approve the Joint Architectural Board and Plan Commission minutes of the May 15th, 2023 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the Joint Architectural Board Plan and Plan Commission minutes of the May 15th meeting.
Second.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from the May 15th, 2023 meeting. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion is carried. The next item that we have on the agenda is Architectural Board review and consideration of plans for a modified roof plan for Aquatech. This is at 1150 James Drive. Are they, please?
Hi, Ken Cray, MSI General. Rick Hargarten, MSI General.
You want to just give a brief overview of what you're looking to do?
Sure. Aquatech, as you know, has been a tenant in the building for some time now. A few years back, they had increased a small area of the roof section due to some of the equipment they put in the building. That business unit is doing well, and so they look to expand that a little bit. And so that's the proposed, basically mimicking the we call it the hi-hat area, but a small section of roof that's raised. It's really not that noticeable from the front of the building, obviously from the back a little bit more, but architecture would be similar to what's already been previously approved. And so just as the packet indicates, the pictures do a great job of what the rendering would look like.
Okay. Anybody on the board have questions for the presenters? It's been moved and seconded to allow for the change and expansion to the roof at Aquatech. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion is carried. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
The next item on our agenda is Architectural Board review and consideration of a plan for a sunroom addition at the Davis property. This is located at 721 East Capitol Drive.
Good evening, my name is Tim Rigsby, I'm with Rigsby Group. We're a design build firm out of Delafield. We're working with the Barb and Dan Davis. They have an existing home that has a deck over their garage, and they would like to build a Three Seasons room that connects to their home, inside their home, and covers about 2/3 of this deck that's on the back side of their home. We've had plans, I don't know if you've seen the plans of this. I have some here if you wanted to, but we're looking for approval to build that one-story sunroom.
Does anyone on the board have questions for the presenter?
Just a couple questions, and then Scott, I'm sure will help you out.
The existing door headers and stuff are gonna be able to hold the loads?
We're having that engineered now, and there will be an engineered stamp drawing for the structural part. of the
Running
roof.
into some problems on different sites where they run a continuous header all the way out to the end to carry the roof load. The problem comes in is when you start dividing it out into separate spaces for the screens. What's happening is when that header deflects, it's making point loads all the way along these decks, and it's pushing them down at those spots. No one ever calculates out that all of a sudden you have one big point load at the very end, long continuous header. But when you divide it out for the screens, it's been a problem the
Yeah,
last couple of
if
years.
you're looking at the drawing,
Yeah.
the wall, the load-bearing wall that's going to be within the deck space, that's gonna most likely have a continuous LVL or steel, depending on how it's calced out. It's on top of 2x12 TJIs right now, but the other side will be on the foundation wall. And that's being engineered out now.
Yeah, that's
to carry
been
that.
kind of been the thorn
And we
last couple
put,
of
we
years.
put structural support between all the windows too, or
Blocking-
several
yeah,
several
blocking
pods,
points.
yeah. Parts.
I have no further questions for you. Done.
Scott, I'm sure you'll keep an eye on the engineering.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
make
It's
sure the loads
within
are
the
up.
existing footprint.
Yep,
They're just going up.
yep. And this is more of this is listed as architectural at this time. Anybody else have any questions?
No, I think it looks real nice. Make a motion to approve
Oh. It's been moved and seconded to approve the three-season room addition. Any discussion? Do you have anything, David? I think Dino has something. Dino, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I was wondering, since people brought up the structural part, have these updates been signed by a PE?
They will be. They're being engineered right now by Patera engineers.
Then I would like to add to the approval that it's contingent upon the signature of a PE of these changes.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Seconded.
So am I, as I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve this addition, and that our inspector will make sure everything comes out and that it's engineered properly with the proper signature. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, the next item we have here is an architectural board review and consideration of an application for signage for CL&D. This is at 535 Norton Drive. We have a presenter here for that. Paperwork is in the packet. It'll be up to the board.
Anything odd with this one, Scott?
No, I think it's all replacement signage. And they knew to be present either in person or otherwise.
Is anybody on Zoom for CL&D signage?
Are they changing, Scott, anything with lighting or landscaping, anything?
No, it's,
I
I
didn't
think
see
the
that.
wall signs are non-illuminated. I think it is just one wall sign, 2 accessory ground signs. And I think they're all existing being replaced.
Other than them not being here right now, would there be any reason that you would recommend not approving this?
No.
Okay.
Given that it's replacements of the existing, I'll make a motion to approve the signs.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to allow CL&D to replace their signs as shown in the packet and what they submitted. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion is carried. Now we'll get on, we'll take these one at a time, but we'll get on to items that have to do with the quarry. Those are the items coming up here. So now we have Plan Commission will conduct a review of the Hartland Quarry. It's a proposed PUD development whose approval and rezoning is being sought by Three Leaf Partners LLC on property tax keys HAV 730981. I'm sorry, that's HAV 0730 and then HAV 0730 HAV 0730 and 730987. This is located at 700 and 701 West Capitol Drive. So what the Plan Commission has to review is proposed preliminary site and building plans for 10 multi-family apartments, 240 units, and 3 townhomes, which is 27 units. Also, proposed plans for amenities for the project. Also, proposed rezoning to RM2 in conjunction with the PUD agreement for the project. And then also, proposed petition for a planned unit development. I know that some of them are there if they would like to come to the podium, the presenters, and just give a very brief, or if there's any questions from the board. We'll have those right up front, and then we'll get into going through these.
Real quick, just so everybody in the public is aware, this is meeting number 1. They have to come back to the Plan Commission in a month. At that point, if the Plan Commission felt they would move it forward to the village board, the village board would have a first hearing it'd be at the end of July. You would set a public hearing for 30 days, so that would go into, because of the 30 days, it would go into like August. The final approval of this, if everything went well, I think we said September, October, correct? So, just to give everyone an idea of the time frame of what something like this does take.
Okay. Well, good evening, and thank you, Jeff. My name is John Ford, president of Three Leaf Partners. We are a full-service real estate development company and developer of the Hartland Quarry project before you this evening. The development project is located, as you know, at 700 West Capitol Drive, totaling approximately 45 acres. This unique and very challenging site poses a number of added levels of consideration to make this development successful. Over the past number of months, we have been collaboratively working with village staff and consultants to find a successful solution for all parties. What we'll be explaining and showing here tonight in this effort, which if approved, will in the years to come take this currently very underutilized, challenging site and turn it into approximately 267 residential units that would be home to 400 to 500 Hartland residents. The overall economic impact of this project to the community and surrounding area will be significant. We have our entire project team here this evening to be most efficient with your time and attempt to answer any questions that you may have. Any questions we don't have an answer for, we'll certainly follow up with those with the village staff. We'll do our best to keep this presentation moving along while providing a very thorough and complete background of this project. We'll begin by providing just a little bit of background about Three Leaf, followed by a quick architectural design review, our civil review, and geotechnical and environmental concerns. Three Leaf's motto as a development company is impact through real estate, and this project is certainly no different as we view it in the impact that it can have not only for Hartland but the surrounding economic community. Many of you know Pat Kyneson for the impact that he makes on the basketball court with the Milwaukee Bucks, but tonight we're looking to make a major impact here in Hartland. As co-owner of Three Leaf Partners, Pat would just like to say a few words about Three Leaf Partners, our mission, and our commitment to this project.
Thanks everybody for taking the time. Pat Connaughton. Just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time. One of the things, so I don't know if everybody knows, but I grew up under a general contractor, my father. So what I found, a lot of his success in having an impact in the real estate game was through kind of personalizing and being able to kind of explain and talk a little bit about who he was and how passionate he was about real estate, and I've become no different. And so that's kind of where Three Leaf was born from. That's where the motto came from. It's trying to create 3 different leaves that have impacts through real estate and in many different ways. And the company overall, that's kind of what we try to do on a daily basis, is utilize real estate as a vehicle to have an impact in the communities we work in, both obviously physically with the real estate that's built, but also with the community members in which the real estate is built. We've done that through plenty of projects where we've partnered with mission-based organizations, and we've found ways to develop excess land that they have to help them obviously find ways to monetize and put money towards their mission, but also found ways to continue to impact some of the school systems and create scholarships for some kids who are in those areas or in those communities. And with this one project specifically, this one's about trying to continue to put more people into the city of Hartland, raise the tax basis, continue to help the employment, and really utilize and shed light and highlight on everything that is great about this community. So as a company, we want to continue to strive to do that. John's going to talk obviously about the specifics of the project, but we want to make sure that we get the feedback that you guys have to try to make this something that you guys can be proud of. We want it to be something that obviously we're proud of. That's how we kind of handle every project, but we want the people to kind of take pride in, and the people of Hartland take pride in what we're trying to build here and what we're trying to do with this site. Obviously, that's been a quarry for years. So those were kind of the just main things I wanted to say, and not take up too much time, but make sure you guys kind of saw my face and heard from me on how we try to operate over at Three Leaf Partners.
Thank you.
So the project itself, as I mentioned, is 267 units, multifamily and condo development, with a total development cost estimated at $90.7 million. JLA Architects is a very experienced multifamily architect that we have worked with on multiple projects previously. Troy Jacoby is Director of Design for JLA and the primary architect on this project. Troy will walk you through the overall architectural, site plan, finishes, and play a fly-through animation video that we created for this site to really give you a much better idea of the overall development.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Thanks, John. By any chance, could you pull up the architectural drawings? Let's see. It started with a cover sheet and a nice rendering. That might give you a good cue. But I get to follow Pat Connaughton. That's pretty cool. Tell my sons that. Yeah. Yes, that is. Yes, that is. All right. Well, we'll start here. I'll make it brief. We do have an animation that kind of walks you through the project and tells the story. What you're seeing here on the screen is a rendering of the clubhouse itself, and in the background you can see a playground, and beyond that playground you can see the townhomes themselves. That was off the boulevard. So looking at the plan itself, you can see Capitol Drive kind of S's down at the bottom of the screen. Everything shown in that darker green is the developable area of our project. So once again, you can see our 10 stacked flats that you see in the back. And when we say stacked flats, it's really a two-story apartment building, but there's no common corridors. You have direct entry into your units. So we have a direct entry on the first floor, and you have a direct entry on the second floor. And then we have the townhomes directly on the street off Capitol Drive. And what works nice off Capitol Drive, we position the short end of the buildings along Capitol Drive, so it looks like a smaller home. It's a two-story, smaller expression, fits into the surrounding context nicely. And then nestled between those townhomes is the actual clubhouse itself. Yeah, you can keep going, that's perfect. And what we're really proud about in this development is the pedestrian experience. And you're gonna get a sense of that pedestrian experience in the animation itself. This boulevard is going to be a very pedestrian-friendly boulevard, tree-lined, sidewalks, and really, you're not going to see garages. It's a very community-friendly building. And the layout that we have, we're able to create kind of these alleys behind the building to handle the service side. So, and what you're seeing here is the townhomes itself. It's a mix of two-bedroom units and three-bedroom units. So at the end caps of the building are three-bedroom units, and everything in between is 2 bedrooms for the townhomes. So 9 units, some elevations. Traditional forms, we see gable roofs, we see shed roofs, we see porches, but we try to do it in a modern, contemporary way while still using traditional materials. And obviously pulling stone into the project, very important. This is the clubhouse itself. The clubhouse will have a fitness room. We'll have a what we call a clubhouse with concierge table, a pool table, a fireplace, direct access to the pool, as well as some offices for the development. So here you can see the composition of the building, very high gables, tall gables, a combination of bay windows, shed roofs, And if you just scroll just up just a little bit, here's a nice rendering of the, a little slow. That was a nice rendering of the clubhouse itself. But material-wise, what you're seeing on the screen, you'll see a lot of white, you see some buff, you see some dark colors. So the white is a board and batten, what we call a board and batten. It is like a cementitious panel. A lot of barns had board and batten looks back in the day, so that's become more in vogue. And then we're showing the buff colors of tan is the actual stone itself, and then the darker color, once again, is a board and batten. And then the orangey color is wood accents. Is it, oh, there, so this is kind of elevated. We're looking back towards Capitol Drive. So in the background, you'll see Capitol Drive. The new boulevard is cutting through the screen, dotted with those kind of reddish trees. And then off on the right-hand side, you can see a little playground, and then obviously the clubhouse itself. These are the 24-unit, what we call stacked flats. Every unit has a garage. The bulk of the garages are behind this unit, but there are some garages that are intermingled into the development itself. So you can see there's actual cars positioned in those positions. And it is a mix of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms for this development. And the elevations, once again, every building has similarities, but every building's, the intent is to stand on its own. But we are using those same palette of materials that carries across through every building, the stone, the board and batten siding, as well as the wood accent. And some garages. So those will be positioned directly behind the building. And here we're hovering above the central boulevard, looking back at those 24-unit buildings. And once again, way in the background is Capitol Drive. So way off on the upper left is Capitol Drive. And here you can see the Tree-lined Boulevard, the sidewalks. There is some parallel parking directly in front of these units as well for guests. And this is another view looking back towards the development. So Craig's going to do a great job of explaining the civil side, but in this view you can see some retaining walls. So essentially you will be rising up, I don't know, 15 feet or so. Craig will know the right number. But then once you get up to a higher plateau, it kind of flattens out. So once you get beyond those smaller townhomes, it starts to flatten out. And here's the actual color palettes examples of the stone that we intend to use, the board and batten and the wood accent. And if you have the animation queued up, that would be fantastic. Yeah, the video. Okay. Well, looks like you might.
Playing it right now. Listening.
All right.
So in addition to obviously the significant focus, we've been paying attention on the architectural design side. This site, perhaps more than many other sites, the main focus was on, or is on, the civil design. Payne & Dolan is a very experienced engineering company and civil engineer for this project. Their knowledge of both this site and similar sites has been very important and key throughout this overall design process. Craig Donzie is engineering manager with Payne & Dolan and will walk us through the high level of the civil design for the site.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Thanks, John.
May I ask a quick question before you go through the civil part? Is there any geotechnical firm involved on this project? Because you have a huge elevation differential between several areas. You have a major slope stability failure possibility, not that it cannot be done. I read all your documents, and maybe it's prematurely to ask this, but I have a hard stop at 10 after 8 due to my work. I also noticed you're putting gravity retaining walls about 8 feet, which means they are structural. Are you reinforcing with geogrid? Are you driving any piles? Because you have major slope stability issues there.
So real quick too, Dino, they do have a geotech, and the village has contracted with our own geotech, just so you do know.
Yeah, Geotest is here, speaks right after me, right? Yep, okay. So we'll address some of the concerns that we just heard. This is a challenging site. The site was last operated as a sand and gravel pit in the 70s.
I'm not against it. I just wanted to make sure, having a PhD in structural engineering, when I saw what you're doing, made me very concerned, and I hope you're addressing it the right way.
The site was last operated as a sand and gravel pit in the 70s and produced primarily road gravel. Sand and gravel was extracted from the entirety of the site with perimeter slopes approaching 1.5 to 1 slopes along portions of High Street, the St. Charles Cemetery, and the Village Cemetery properties. The resulting slopes are generally stable based on the gravelly nature of the soils and with 30 years of vegetation present. Portions of the site along the eastern boundary were excavated due to excess silt and clay in the gravel deposits. The maximum extent of the Palmer sand and gravel operation occurred in the 50s and included all of the area north of Edelson Road, south of Hill, west of the cemeteries, and excluded the residential properties that are still present along the north side of Capitol Drive. The site is, the majority of the property is internally drained with no natural outlet for stormwater runoff other than infiltration. The depths of groundwater based on well drillers' records for the properties surrounding the site are in excess of 200 feet at each of those wells. As a result, the site is being internally drained, is an internally drained gravel pit with 2 large pockets of concentrated silt overlying the native gravel. These are located in the lowest points of the pit at the northwest corner adjacent to the village's water tower property, and at the southwest corner adjacent to the cemeteries. That's actually northwest corner adjacent to the cemeteries. A large stockpile of overburden material was placed along the east side of Palmer Drive in the 80s in conjunction with construction of Highway 16 and 83. The overburden also provided truck access for sand and gravel used for the production of ready-mix concrete by Two's Concrete. The remnants of the original concrete batch plant are still present on the site. The second generation concrete batch plant was constructed in the early 90s on the property east of the Quonset hut structure. The remnants of the aggregate storage bins are still present today. By 2000, an office and warehouse and repair shop was constructed north of Capitol to support the ready-mix business. For the duration of the time that Two's Concrete operated from the site, concrete ready-mix trucks, washout spoils, and concrete chunks were deposited at the site. Based on historical photographs and the information from prior operators, the material was generally placed at the lowest areas of the gravel pit or west of the village's cemetery property. The concrete chunks primarily consist of concrete curb and concrete pavement, along with concrete washout. The material is generally unclassified and estimated at approximately 55 to 60,000 cubic yards. A material that is, when crushed, suitable for supporting buildings and utilities. Bob's here. He's going to talk through some of the environmental sides of that, but there are impacted soils and groundwater use restrictions on the property. With a challenging site with this unique history, Payne & Dolan was pleased to be part of the project. We've worked really collaboratively with the architects and Three Leaf Partners to determine, as you saw in that original overall site plan, what was the buildable footprint here. And there's been prior proposals on this site. The big difference from what you're seeing today versus what you've seen in the past is the focus on those perimeter slopes, what's truly buildable, and what's economical to deliver. You've seen some revisions from this site plan, from this project team as a result of that. The project's got to be affordable. There's been significant effort to reduce the width of the developable area, narrowing up streets, reducing travel speeds, making it a walkable community. We've worked very collaboratively with the village engineer and Scott on dimensions between buildings, dimensions of roads, one-way streets, two-way streets in the backs of the buildings. Looked at alternatives for how the utilities are going to serve this site to provide water connection from Capitol, 2 connection points into the village's water system. And again, we continue to refine those site improvements to be able to make sure we can deliver a project that the numbers are going to work, that it's going to be an investment for Three Leaf Partners, it's going to work for the village for generating tax increment, and be a community that you're going to be proud of.
So I know it was mentioned about geotechnical in the soils, so I'd like to talk about that now. Obviously, the soil conditions for the site, it's vital to understand those. Mike Freedy from Geotest has been engaged. Mike is a senior engineer with outstanding knowledge and experience, and he'll give an overview of the geotechnical work that's been completed to date, as well as next steps as we move this development forward.
Good evening. I'm Michael Fruity with Geotest. It's a property that certainly has geotechnical challenges, but we are absolutely confident they can all be managed and dealt with. And the conditions will be superior for the supportive structures, not only buildings, but retaining walls and pavements. The soils primarily consist of native materials that were placed there by the glaciers, and then man-made materials that have been brought in. The base of the original pit consists primarily of granular sand and gravel, high strength, high capacity. The materials that have been brought in by man consist of a large area of a lot of concrete. That material will be removed in its entirety, crushed, and then reused as engineered fill. There is some fill that was brought in that is primarily in the northern part of the property, that was brought in from a local sewer project. We also evaluated those materials. They were placed, limited documentation, it is limited, suggests that materials were suitably compacted, but we will do further evaluation to confirm that they're all suitable. Those materials won't actually support building foundations. They will support new engineered fill, because that part of the property will be raised up. So we're more concerned about making sure that it won't compress under the weight of additional fill that's placed over it. There is some fill that exists over where the existing asphalt plant facility is. A lot of those soils will also be removed during construction activities, and then they will be, if suitable, reused as engineered fill. So everywhere on this property where there will be structures, whether it's buildings, retaining walls, pavements, they will all be supported by suitable soils. Another part of our evaluation has been to look at the existing bluffs that surround the property. Everybody knows about that. So we have spent substantial amount of time evaluating those bluffs up to this point. We've walked all the bluffs, we've climbed all the bluffs, we have sampled all the bluffs. So we have good baseline data that will be utilized in slope stability analyses to make sure that those slopes are stable and safe during construction and after construction. I think I've pretty much covered it. Yes.
I'm going to ask if the commissioner that asked the question.
Yes.
Mr. Zekis, do you have anything to ask
No,
or add?
actually, I'm happy to hear what the gentleman said. They know what they're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Especially by removing all this material. It's the right thing to do.
So equally important is understanding the environmental conditions of the site and how they could affect design and other factors. Endpoint Solutions is a leader in assessing environmental conditions that we have partnered with on numerous projects previously. Bob Segal is owner and principal of Endpoint Solutions, and here this evening to give us an overview from an environmental standpoint.
Good evening, Bob Segali, Endpoint Solutions. Our job as environmental consultants is usually to take and identify the known and the unknowns. And as we progress through the project, hopefully we can address all those unknowns and make them knowns. In the end, our goal is always to provide a site that is protective to human health and the environment. The knowns right now, we all know that there's a closed leaking underground storage tank site in the far west corner, kind of north of the existing office building. That site was closed by the DNR previously. There is some residual contamination left behind. So one of the unknowns associated with that is how could that contamination affect the planned development? So there are plans moving forward to do some additional investigation in that area, not from the standpoint of reopening it with the WDNR per se, but more or less to identify, is there anything there residually that could impact the residents? And how can we properly manage those soils when we get in and start excavating the site? The great unknown when we came into the site was the fill material that's been placed on the site since the quarry shut down. There's always a question what was brought in. As part of the geotechnical investigation, they did 10, 11, 12 test pits out on site, backhoe, digging nice holes, can see the character of the soils. We collected samples from each one of those test pits and had them analyzed for volatiles, semi-volatiles, metals, and PCBs. Pleasantly surprised, no VOCs, no PCBs, and we only had some isolated impacts of very low concentration semi-volatiles, typically what you find with asphalt. Surprisingly, some of the fill that was brought in was from road projects. So we're thinking right now that's probably just residual pieces of asphalt that are mixed in with the soil. Moving forward, we'll be working with the DNR closely on it. I typically like to start all these projects with what they call a technical assistance meeting. Sit down with the DNR project manager, talk about the development, talk about what we found, how we're thinking we want to progress, kind of get their buy-in before we even start anything. They feel they have ownership of the project also, and we can kind of work together on it. Like I said, we've had some additional work to do around where the underground storage tank issue was, and then be on site while they start moving dirt. And, I think we'd be remiss if we all thought that, we're going to be able to move everything and not find any surprises. There'll be some surprises we find out there, but by having an experienced professional out there while it's being done, we can identify those, we can make sure that it's being segregated, it's being dealt with, and not causing a bigger problem down the road by being moved someplace where it shouldn't be. So I think we've got a good handle, certainly don't have all the answers at this point, but it's a progress. And so far, I think we're all pleasantly surprised with what we found out there.
Yeah. Are you planning your H2 environmental?
Yes.
How far along are you with the first phase?
Well, the first phase was the sampling that we did along with the test pit investigation, the geotechnical. So that's where we are right now. It's going to progress with the project, as the project progresses.
Okay, thank you.
Can,
Mr. President.
can you go to the microphone and just clarify? We have a commissioner that's on Zoom, so he didn't catch it because it's not on the
sorry.
microphone.
Yes,
Just
yes,
the question, what the question was, and then your
I heard
response.
it.
Yeah, the question was whether or not we're going to do a phase two. Really, the sampling that we did as part of the test pit investigation with the geotech was the beginnings of a phase two. And the additional investigation that we'll be doing out there will progress as the project progresses. You know, I would think from Three Leaf standpoint, it's like any other investment in the project. As, you know, they get more confident with the approvals coming, there'll be more spends that go with the environmental, the geotechnical and everything. So it's something that we're moved down the line with.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Dino.
It's for the gentleman from the geotech firm. Based on your assessment, your professional assessment so far, you said there is nice drainage, there is sand, there is gravel, but I also heard the gentleman talking about emulsified asphalt in there from roads projects. Do you think, I'm not trying to get you to commit, based on what you've seen so far, do you think you will have to drive piles for stability of the foundation, especially looking at the elevation differences and the groundwater flow?
No, we will not need piles.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just wanted to talk a little bit to the environmental side of the property. Just by way of background, you know, this is what I do day in, day out for my job. And so I would agree with sort of the initial findings that the site has some pretty typical constituents and quite frankly is fairly clean from the initial investigation that they did. So anytime you're moving a property from a use like a quarry or an industrial use to residential, it's critically important that we evaluate that to make sure that it's being done safely. So I'm pleased and pleasantly surprised with some of the initial investigations that have been done. I think there is some more clarification and some additional stuff that needs to be done around the underground storage tank area. But again, nothing that I've seen so far screams at me that there isn't, that there is something that would prevent this kind of a development from happening.
John, if I can add one. Sorry. I failed to mention that a major effort will be employed during construction, especially the site improvement phase, where a lot of material is going to be moved. There's going to be a lot of grading, and during that whole process, we'll be on site and evaluating all the soils that are being moved, all the materials that are being picked up and crushed. If we're finding anything that's not suitable, it will be removed. So we're going to know just about everything that's out there. Because there'll be major site changes inside the pit.
No, we've taken, from the village's side, we've taken to be proactive that we will have somebody hand in hand with them essentially as well, making sure everyone agrees.
Yep, and just one more comment on that. I think that is the biggest concern I have with the amount of grading and changes that are happening is what's in the ground and does it get nearer to the ground and nearer to the surface of the property, and how do we manage that material?
So obviously we talked a lot about the overall development. I'd like to just do a quick recap and then we'll certainly open up if there's any additional Q&A. Because I think some of these bullet point recap items will answer some of the questions that were asked earlier from the public, as well as some of the questions that you all may have. So total development costs, as I mentioned, $90.7 million. There's 240 of the stacked flat units, along with 27 of the townhomes for condos, in addition to the approximately 5,500 square foot clubhouse. The unit breakdown, it's a combination of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. The 1 bedrooms make up 38% of the total. 2 bedrooms are 45%, and the 3 bedrooms are 17%. The units will range in size from just over 700 square feet to up to a 3 bedroom at 1,652 square feet. Rents are ranging from $1,492 per month up to $2,924 for the larger 3 bedroom units. We talked about the amenities, the clubhouse, the state-of-the-art fitness center, the sidewalks and walking paths throughout the development, which total over 1 mile in total. There'll be a dog run area, grilling areas, playground area for kids, the pool, and the community room. The project schedule, I know there's a question about project schedule. We anticipate the overall site work to take approximately 3 months in itself, followed by actual vertical construction is estimated at 18 months. So in total, we're talking a total project schedule around 21 months, plus or minus. The site in total is 45 acres. There'll be open space remaining of approximately 60% of that due to the slopes and the sides that we've talked about. Overall, for parking, we have 294 garage stalls for the total development, along with 294 surface stalls. In addition, there are, you saw on the boulevard area in particular, there's essentially street parking for an additional 54 cars, along with 19 cars at the clubhouse area itself. So in total, the development has 661 stalls for parking. From a unit count, that is 2.48 parking stalls per unit. This meets your requirements as outlined in section 46-923, which our development would have required 613 stalls, which is 2.29 stalls per unit. From a traffic standpoint, TADI has performed a full traffic analysis of this site. This development meets the recommendations, including we're going to install sidewalks along the north side of Capitol as they recommended. We'll be clearing trees away for additional visibility along Capitol on the north side. Construct a single entrance, single primary entrance at Capitol and Vedelson with stop sign control. Our property would be directly aligned with Vedelson as TADI recommended within their report. And we would certainly support the village installing a right turn island on Vedelson to eliminate some of the westbound traffic cutting that intersection that you've had in the past. From an overall economic and financial impact, we estimate this development will have approximately 300 construction jobs. Total bedrooms are 480, so that leads to what we estimate between 400 and 500 residents within this overall development. If you assume that each of those 500 residents spent $250 at restaurants, shops, bars, etc. here in Hartland, over 20 years, that is a $30 million economic impact to this community. The estimated assessed value of the development, and we're working with Ellers obviously to confirm this, but the estimated assessed value is $60.3 million, which would lead to annual taxes of $748,000. We've been working, as I mentioned, with Ellers with regards to the TIF request in order to make this development a reality. The objective from village staff and Ellers is that this development could be self-supporting any TIF requests that we brought forward. So why do we need TIF for this project? We've talked about some of the extreme challenges of this overall site. The site costs for this development are estimated at $8.8 million. That includes all private utilities, roads, and all the engineering that we talked about previously. Bob mentioned the environmental impacts. Construction costs, obviously right now, continue to remain high within the overall economy. Interest rates, and with our TIF requests, what it does is it gets us to a what we deem a very market return of 13% for the project, where Three Leaf will go out and raise the equity needed for the project in a total of $24 million is our essential investment into this community for this project. I know there's one question earlier that talked about why don't we have more density? I gotta say, I've been doing this for a while and working with a lot of different communities. I'm not sure I've ever had that statement. Usually it goes the other direction, so I'm happy to hear that. It's a very good question. When we started this process a number of months ago, this was targeted to be just north of 400 units, as I think was mentioned. What we found out during the process, primarily due to we had three-story mid-density apartments towards the back portion of the site. Those would have underground parking and long, kind of your traditional multifamily buildings, common corridors, underground parking, and what we found out, or what we determined throughout this process, is the construction costs for those were hindering the financial performance. Those units, there's two buildings, 118 units each, 236 units. Those compared to the stacked flats were coming in around 25,000 to 30,000 more per unit compared to the stacked flats. So we made the strategic decision to swap out, I don't know, Ryan, if you can just scroll down on that site plan there. Either one. So you'll see on the north part of the site plan, there's now 4 additional stacked flat buildings. Those replaced, yeah, right up there. Those replaced the 236 units, so 96 units replaced the 236. That brought us to the 267 units today, but from an economic standpoint, while still a very significant project, it makes it financially feasible from an equity and investment standpoint. Our request, so we're working with Ellers, and not necessarily that's up before you today, but we have submitted to Ellers our TIF request. That previous iteration, the 407 units, in order to achieve a 13% market rate return, as I mentioned, would have totaled $28 million of TIF assistance. We obviously had the discussion with Ellers. We knew, obviously, the answer, but the development was not providing for that, self-supporting that at that level. The request today at the 267 units is for $9.9 million of TIF assistance. That totals 11% of total development costs. In addition to that, we're asking for a waiver of the impact fees above the Del Hart fees. So this would be, the Del Hart fees are just north of $6,000 per unit. We would request a waiver of those fees. That totals approximately $1 million of added value for a total incentive of $11 million is our request from the village. That equals 12% of total development costs. We appreciate your time this evening. We look forward to executing and delivering this tremendous project for the village. With that, our team would be certainly happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a quick question. Out of your 661 stalls, how many of those are ADA or disability?
Right. Well, do you want to come up here? Sure. Just like in here.
I am working from memory here, so bear with me. But at the clubhouse, I know we have two. We have 2 for sure at the clubhouse, and then we've currently identified 5 for the stack flats. Right. Obviously, we need to double check that. We have to meet code, right? So we will absolutely meet code. Okay.
Yeah. As far as when we move forward, you saying that some of the units of the 9 surrounding the clubhouse could be condos, or are they going to be sold as condos in the future? Or I thought I read something in here that they might be considered condos.
The townhomes.
The townhomes,
We're targeting sold condos, owner occupied. Those are the 9, 3 buildings, so 27 units total.
And when you come back, are you going to have some type of condo association workings?
There would be with that, yes.
Okay. I guess the other thing is just for as far as paint and Dolan goes, you may want to reach out to some of the people that actually remember that being working gravel pit. I do remember it being a working gravel pit. One of the things I want to make sure that the village and you guys are aware of, and it gets addressed, is that there was a tunnel that led north under Hill Street, which is now the apartment complex there. It's changed hands over the years. I don't know the name. When that was developed, the north end of that tunnel was pushed in with dirt to create the entranceway into that development. When you're in the gravel pit and you look up where Hill Street is, there's some big concrete bunkers up there. Those were the anchor points, if I remember, for the cables that came down to hold up that conveyor. It gravity fed down into a tunnel system below it, and then that conveyor ran up to the crusher. So there was like a gravity fed thing that came off of that conveyor that ran onto Hill Street. My only concern is, and I know you guys will look into this, is when you push dirt in from both sides of a tunnel, it can be hollow in the middle. And that's what I think might be happening under Hill Street. It was quite a big sized tunnel. I mean, when you're young, everything looks huge. But it was serviceable. People went in there and shoveled the gravel underneath it. They worked in there. So I think the size was almost 8 by 8, and you may want to check with somebody that knows that. But I can tell you with certainty that it was filled from one end, but not all the way through. It was hollow. Then someone filled the gravel pit side full. I can't believe that that thing is filled solid from one end to the other, that it is hollow underneath Hill Street. And it's been there a very, very long time. And when you get into your soil and you're testing and you're digging, there might be a big hollow spot right below those concrete ones where there was another tunnel that the conveyor came out of to get to the crusher for the elevation change. I think that was just basically filled. There was 2 tunnels, yeah, 2 tunnels. Just so when you're looking into it, you can kind of address those things in the
Yeah, we
future.
appreciate those comments. We were able to meet on site with Prairie Materials' last site manager. Environmental was present, Geotech was present. We were there, John was there, so that was a valuable tour through that with him. But every time we kind of talk to some locals that have that kind of history, it's really important. So appreciate you sharing that with us.
And you said something about some asphalt being in a product of residue from asphalt. I believe, and I can't remember this, I know some of the concrete from the old Highway 16 when it was a 2-lane road ended up at Ray Drive, and that's what the park sits on. That's what holds that park up in the ball field. I believe some of it ended up in that gravel pit too, and it would be way to the north end. If you come across that, there should be re-rod and concrete slabs from the old Highway 16 and the asphalt that was on top of it, and that's maybe where you're getting your asphalt residue out of, is from that old highway being buried in there. I yield.
Tim, do you have anything?
Well, I don't have anything negative. I love the concept. I love the idea. I like the boulevard, the roundabout. I think it's a nice little town, actually, within a town. So initially, I have really no concerns at this time.
I'm good, thank you.
For myself, I like the idea of something being developed in an area that's being completely underutilized. To see the proposed developer to propose and make so many changes to try to fit what is being looked for the best benefit of Hartland is a good thing, in my opinion. I say that because obviously we do have to think about longevity. Where we're at now is based on things that were done over the last, 40, 30, 20 years to get us where we are now. That gives us this wonderful community, and to sustain that, especially at the rates of tax that we are at now, which are extremely low for many of the areas around Lake Country. These are the kind of developments that happen that lead to not only Hartland being as beautiful as it is, but also the foresight to actually utilize properties. And it's more important than ever now, in my opinion, because as was stated earlier, there's not a whole heck of a lot of land left, and then all we have is air, and then everything goes up. So I really do like the concept. I like the idea of it. I think it's a great idea. I think it utilizes that property. It sounds like all of the checks are going to be there to make sure that this is done safely, especially with it converting from its old uses to if it would become a residential use. And I think that it will be something that will be great for Hartland for the foreseeable future, but definitely for the next half century.
What are you planning to do with the vegetation on the hillsides as far as invasive species and that?
Yeah, your packet includes a lot of critical sections that are scattered throughout that site, really looking at what does it look like dimensionally from a slope stability. Initial looks at slope stability that provided that buildable footprint. So the goal is to keep everything above, 15 feet above finished floor. So basically building pad grade, keep that existing vegetation in place. It's serving its purpose. It's keeping most of the slopes stable. There's some isolated areas that need some attention, but the vast majority of that vegetation that's, above eye height really needs to stay in place. The slopes out there are, most of them are 2.5 to 1. There's a few areas that are 1.5 that'll need some improvement. So the vegetation's really doing its job.
Elder trees.
Fair enough, but they still have root systems that are keeping that slope stable. But you're right, there's definitely invasives that have grown there over the years. There's all kinds of trees that have grown there over the years. But the root systems are doing what they're supposed to. And they're growing vertically. You know, they're not coming out. In Painted Olin's facilities, you'll see where we've got vertical, true high walls in limestone quarries. The root systems will come out horizontal before they turn and run vertical. The trees that are out here are growing naturally. You see deer running up and down the slopes, walking up and down the slopes, not running or sliding. There's vegetation there that needs to stay.
Letting out some of that grade too, aren't you?
Yeah, the back of that quarry is actually going to come up about 20 feet from what its lowest. Right now, the back of that quarry is 10 feet below Capitol Drive. So we'll come up off of Capitol about 15 feet, and then we'll flatten out and really stay within 4 or 5 feet of that plateau all the way to the back, keeping the site internally drained. So most of the material is what you see is an overburden pile along the east side of Palmer. That's granular material. That'll be the source, the majority of the fill. That pile will go away and get moved to the back.
I mean, I can probably follow up with a few sort of more detailed kind of questions, but I think overall, I mean, I always revert back to what does the Village of Hartland Comprehensive Development Plan show? That's sort of the job of the Plan Commission, is to look at what did we say was going to be the future of this piece of property for the village. And it shows that it is planned to be multi-family residential housing with a portion of the space as green space. And I think when I look at this plan, it fits exactly with what the vision for this property was. I think it would be a really beneficial reuse of an underutilized piece of property close to the village center. It would support the businesses in the village. And I think it's fairly unique in the fact that it's really sort of surrounded by bluffs and is fairly protective of the surrounding properties and property owners. So it has fairly limited impact on the neighbors. And so I think it's a really great opportunity. And I think, from that perspective, I certainly think it's a really positive project that could happen here in the village.
Mr. Zekis?
I'm happy to hear Mr. David DeCourcy say those things because I know he checks that plan pretty thoroughly. So I'm happy with everything I heard and everything I've seen so far. I'm a little concerned, on the area that the slope is 10 feet below Capitol Drive and they have to raise it 20 feet. That's a major soil stability section, but it's doable. It's not anything out of the ordinary. It would be nice for Hartland. And by having said that, I have to go into another video conference with China, so I apologize.
There's no vote on this, so thank you for joining us, Mr. Zekias.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just real quick, my comments. So the next step for the public, the relief, everybody here would be July, I believe it's July 19th would be our next meeting, July 17th. July 17th would be the next meeting. The only way this project comes back is if engineering, building inspection, geo-environmental, TIF, police, fire, DPW, et cetera, everyone would have to be comfortable bringing it forward. Everybody still has a lot of work to do. We talked with Relief about that everybody, there's 4 or 5 months in this process, so the next time you guys see it, the goal would be that all village staff are comfortable with it, that we'll bring something forward that works out TIF financially. Today is just meeting 1. The next meeting would be where the Plan Commission essentially would move this forward to the village board, but that's not today. Today is exactly what we did, so.
Our inspector, Scott Hussinger, do you want to? Yep.
That the rezoning petition has to be modified. We're rezoning to RM1, not RM2, and now with the idea of condos, it's either going to be RM1 and RM3 or just RM1, and I think we'll talk to the village attorney about that.
Mr. Antman, any reason that anything you have to add?
No, I think
negative
the
or positive?
development team has the parts and pieces in place, the expertise in place to move forward with the next steps, to make sure that the site is engineered in a way that is functional and safe.
Our attorney, Delamora, is here. I think you'd have to go over to the microphone, but if you had anything that you wanted to add. So, from all of us here, I appreciate taking the time to go through this so thoroughly. I think it really presents something out. While nothing's on the agenda to show a vote, one thing that I'm going to ask of village staff is it appears to me that this is something that's going to continue to move forward, and it will be on a future meeting. If we could, hopefully this will make it easier on the public also, but if we come up with a timeline at the next Plan Commission agenda, that if it was going to move forward, obviously those can change at any time, but there's public hearings we have to have and things like that, but there's a full timeline there so people can see. So that I'm just trying to I'm trying to prevent at the end, and it's going to happen, but if it were to go all the way through, when someone comes and says, I had no idea this was happening, we're just doing everything we can to get it out to the public. But I personally think it'd be a great thing for Hartland, and I hope it keeps on, I hope it keeps moving forward, and the collaboration between the village staff and all of everyone that's involved with making it happen continues to work together in a nice, smooth way. Thank you for presenting. Thank you all very, very much. The next item on our agenda is Plan Commission review of proposed modifications to Article 4, conditional uses to create division, correct? That is division. Oh, maybe it's just mine. Oh, it's just mine. So I'll restate it, since we had people leaving. The Plan Commission review of proposed modifications to Article 4, conditional uses to create Division 7, Section 46-909, hotel and motel uses to allow hotels in the B2 and B3 and B4 districts as conditional uses. That is the item that's before us at this moment. Ryan, do you want to give a brief on why we needed to have this added, considering that we had nothing for hotels?
Sure. So, as you guys are familiar, there's a developer looking to do a hotel across the street on Cottonwood Avenue. They actually just reached out, touched base with us. We're hoping to have a meeting with them in a couple weeks just to get a refresher going, but we have nothing on our books for a hotel. So we worked with the village attorney, and Attorney De La Mora, listen to the input of staff, and what we're bringing forward in front of you is essentially, fair to say, a conditional use through a PUD that hotels could happen, and I think we're looking at the possibility of our B3, our industrial, and go ahead, Scott, I'll let you list.
It'd be the B3, the B5, and possibly the B2 over by Hartbrook Drive.
But we also want to make it so that the village has the protections through the PUD. But I know some of you had questions last time. Attorney De La Mora is here. If this is something that we move to the village board, it would go through 3 readings, a public hearing, so it does have another 3 meetings after this at the village board level. But Attorney De La Mora is here for questions and concerns.
Just guess from my perspective, I mean, obviously, so I'm understanding this correctly. So the ordinance as written is essentially designed to be very, how can I frame it up? Sort of like a very standard hotel look and requirements for a very sort of typical sort of layout in terms of, for example, buffers to adjacent properties, offsets from lot lines, things like that. I just want to make sure, does it have the flexibility in here for someone to come to the village with a more creative approach so that we could, for example, have a hotel across the street on Cottonwood? And is that part of the intent of the ordinance?
Exactly. What we did was we looked at the ordinances that exist in other communities, jumping off primarily with the Brookfield ordinances. And the reality that we have here is that a lot of the sites that may be candidate for hotel development are surrounded already by existing businesses and differing setbacks, in some cases, historic setbacks. So we concluded that it was necessary to basically look at each prospective site in a critical way and make adjustments to allow the establishment of the hotel or motel while at the same time not disrupting the neighborhood unreasonably. And so we moved the hotel category, if you will, from a permitted use where once that zoning is there, you can come in and put in a hotel so long as you meet the required setbacks, which in many cases are far greater than most of our B2 areas would permit. So as to give the village more control on a case-by-case basis, we recommended that it be a conditional use arrangement so that it comes before the board and before you, before going to the board, and to accommodate the conditional use with the requirement that there be a planned unit development agreement in place. And the advantage of a planned unit development agreement is that it allows the village plan commission and the board to exercise discretion in modifying the setback requirements, the height requirements for the typical placement, and also to require things that aren't obvious now in the abstract, depending on the site that you might have. And so it is a process that will accommodate a tailored solution for the placement of a hotel.
Great, I just want to make sure we have that flexibility.
I have a question about regarding, is it specifically saying that the hotel or motel in the zoning, that's exclusively, that's what it's going to be? I mean, some of these hotels and motels actually have, small kitchens and everything in them. If someone wanted to make it more of an apartment-based thing down the line or elderly care, they would have to come back and rezone that specific property for this, or is it going to be, is there like a time limit on how long it's going to be a hotel or motel? I've seen that happen.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure that when we do this, that area is designated for the hotel motel only, and any changes to that structure would have to come back to the board.
Well, as things have developed in the last 15, 20 years, we've migrated from the traditional hotel room that you would, for example, rent at the Pfister in downtown Milwaukee to an extended stay suites facility, which has not only the kitchen complement, but also laundry facilities for people who are being placed in a community temporarily, anywhere from 1 month to 8 months or so. The use, so long as it continues, is locked in on a conditional use. However, we have a provision that says that in the event that there's a transfer of ownership, we have to have 45 days advance notice of that transfer, and the new owner has to come in and apply for the continuation of the PUD. Now, what the level of compliance with the existing PUD is to be is something that's not defined here because it's being left to the future as such. But there is a requirement that the new operator or owner come before the village to get approval before commencing to do business there.
One more question. So it does sort of reference bed and breakfasts in the upfront section of this ordinance, and I just wanted to get clarification or clarity on, does this ordinance in any way cover, for example, Airbnb rentals, or, you know, that kind of scenario?
It does not specifically cover Airbnb. It basically adopts the state health code regulations for hotels. You'll see, for example, let me take you to that. If you have in front of you the ordinance chapter line 43, which references the ATCP standard, that's the Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection Administrative Code provisions. And basically, that's a very standardized set of requirements that exists if you look at line 63 through 89. This would not be intended to be applied to or rent by owners, short-term rental. This is intended to be primarily a commercial operation, not incidental to an Airbnb that you might have.
Great, just want to make sure that that was crystal clear.
Yeah.
We are looking for a motion to move this to the village board.
I'll make a motion to move it to the board.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to, I'm just looking for the ordinance number, sorry, that I lost it.
It would be at the top. Ordinance to amend.
I got it. Yep. It's been moved and seconded to send to the village board modifications to Article 4, conditional uses to create Division 7, Section 46-909, hotel motel uses to allow hotels in the B2, B3, B4 districts as conditional uses. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried. Now we have, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Now we have consideration of changing time of regular meetings of the Joint Architectural Board and Plan Commission to 6:30 PM from right now it's at 7 PM. I would like to, I think it might not, I'm sorry that I didn't get the chance to ask the other commissioner to see if there's some reason that it would really prohibit him.
He was the one who suggested it.
Oh, never mind.
And he said he, now with him working every day down there, he's not trying to get back or anything, so 6:30 is as good as.
Disregard what I said. Sorry about that.
Make a motion to approve the
Second.
change of, oh, excuse me, the change of the meetings from 7 to 6:30.
It has been moved and seconded to change the standard time of the Plan Commission Architectural Board meetings from 7 PM on the third Monday of each month to 6:30 PM. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion is carried.
Next meeting will be at 6:30.
Now we have announcements. You got anything?
Nope.
Buddy?
Adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn this meeting. All in favor? Aye. This meeting's adjourned.